I think in any good organization, your CEO is leading that vision and it says, this is what's important to me and this is the culture and this is the direction we want to go. And in my position and anybody else in the C-suite, our job is to kind of go execute that. And then there's things that we're working on. They did this roll up into concert stuff, and it's been a little over a year, but we kind of rolled all this in and, they started the board and took all these companies and brought them in and then we started some acquisition. So a lot of the stuff that we're doing is all the back end stuff that I know anyway. Like that was the thing of like, all right, well, some of these things coming from other companies. So like, we're going to go work on IT. We're going to go work on HR, payroll, how we do contracting, insurance. These are not things that like, we don't need to waste the time in a meeting to sit there and be like, well, what do you want to do here?
Yeah.
That's the role of it. And I think then, we try to all strategically look at future opportunities.
Hey, welcome. And thanks for joining me here again on Gears of Gear. So today, first I want to talk about a couple deals that have just been done in our industry. And so first and foremost, the deal that has lingered for more than a year now. I actually remember at one point last year, people saying that it's got to get done by June 1st. And if it doesn't, then it's going into bankruptcy and all kinds of crazy things like that. And here we are a year later in August of 2025, and the four-wall deal has just been announced. And I'm not sure the real details of the deal. It put some sketchy details in the press release, or I should say limited details in the press release, making it a point that they are keeping their management team in place, which is a good thing, I guess, for the, stability of the company, to keep people happy, to keep people feeling motivated or whatever, the staff especially. So that's a good thing. And but they didn't mention much about, sort of the structure of the deal. And I guess the devil's in the details, but looks like a debt deal. I'm sure, they're not buying it to hold it forever. So it looks to me like some sort of a turnaround deal where they're coming in and they're going to improve EBITDA and improve the numbers and improve the books and then flip it for more money in another year or two. That would be my guess anyways, but I'm just speculating at this point. So I don't have any inside information on that or anything. So congratulations to Four-Wall and the team at Four-Wall and their customers and especially their vendors, who now have, I think, some stability and feeling, better about, making big deals with Four-Wall and getting paid and stuff. So great news, and I think it's great for the industry. You don't want that sort of unknown or instability in an industry like ours, especially from one of the largest companies out there. And in news just this morning, so by the time you hear this, it'll be old news, but Clair Brothers or Clair Global are continuing to make moves, and they have purchased friends of ours, Clearwing. And so congratulations to Greg Brunclick and family who have made this deal with Clair. Congratulations to Clair for getting a great company with a great attitude, great gear, great history. I think from 1976, if I remember correctly. You can hear Greg Brunclick talking about that stuff on 2 episodes of Gears of Gear in the past. So again, congratulations to both teams on an excellent deal, great company, etc. And I think Clair Global is also a great company with obviously a pretty big war chest of acquisition funds in play. And so we're going to see, I'm sure, more deals from them in the future. So that's good news. I wanted to jump into AI just for a second here and talk a little bit about AI. As you know, I'm building a business around AI. We have got huge experience in it now. I know more about AI than I think most people do in our industry, and I'm not bragging. It's something that I've been passionate about for the last couple of years. And now I'm headfirst into it, spending literally hundreds of thousands of dollars building product in AI. And so I've learned a lot. And I'm really looking forward to launching this product in a little over a month, actually right at about a month now. September 2nd is sort of a soft launch, but it is a launch. It'll be a live launch on September 2nd. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to that, looking forward to showing everyone what we've built. And we've got some deals on right now for signing up early. We have signed on some clients into a product that doesn't exist yet, which is great. But I'm happy to kind of show you up our skirt if it's something that you'd be interested in. So get involved early. We are showing some deep love to the people getting in early. And so one of the things I've been hearing a lot more about is how close we're getting to this self-improving AGI, artificial general intelligence, or superintelligence even, which I think is still a few years out. But basically, we're talking about AI that develops or grows itself, that codes itself, AI that is teaching itself how to grow. And so how can you protect yourself or your business against AI that's developing itself now and getting smarter on its own, and it doesn't really need us in the future? And so one thing, a few things, and some of these I'm copying from things that I've heard recently, but some of it's just my own feelings. But first of all, get real close to AI, get friendly with AI. Instead of, sort of pushing it away like it doesn't exist or like it won't be a problem or like it's not going to be a part of your life, get close to it. Don't be afraid of it, but partner with it. Become deeply involved with AI. Understand it, accept it, touch it, feel it, and play with it as much as you possibly can. And yes, I'm talking about AI here. And so, yeah, just really, don't be afraid of it. Be friendly with it and become very knowledgeable on AI. It's, even if you hate it, how your parents always taught you when you were a kid, what is it? Get close to your friends, but get closer to your enemies, or something along those lines. Secondly, personal relationships. We know this in our industry. So personal networks, personal relationships, company relationships and networks, not just texting, not just sending AI written emails and stuff like that, which I happen to hate. I am disgusted by the number of AI emails, even from, people who either want a job with me or are communicating with me as employees, and they want a raise or they want something, and they're sending me these AI written emails. I despise them. I'd rather typos and bad grammar and everything else in an email than to see something that's obviously written by AI. But personal relationships, I talk to people in the touring business about this all the time. We've built careers on our relationships. We've built careers on our networks. Certainly, I've built a podcast here on a network and on relationships. And so, that is your value. Your value is in those personal relationships and those deep connections with people, human connection, not connection through or with AI, but human connection, and being compassionate, having compassion for others, for other companies, for what people are going through or what businesses are going through. And, remember this, it's not going to be the smartest who survive or who outthink AI, because AI is going to be smarter than all of us. It's smarter than most of us already today, myself included. But very soon it's going to be, we're talking about this year, an IQ of over 250 with AI, which means that it's smarter than any human on Earth, pretty much. And exponentially smarter than most humans, at least 2x smarter than most humans. So, it's not the smartest who survive, but it's the people with the deepest and best and most connections who will survive AI. And I truly believe that. And question everything. So that's one of the things that I've seen with people who are early stage getting into AI or using ChatGPT or writing letters with it or reading letters with it or reading news articles, and it happens to me with people around me who will come to me and say, did you hear that Elon Musk is blah, or Trump did this, or Madonna did that, or whoever it is, some famous person did whatever. And I would say a good 5 or 6 times out of 10, it's bullshit. It's just made up AI news. You see football players being traded. You see drivers being demoted from F1 or hired on F1. You see all kinds of things. So-and-so suing so-and-so. And, a high percentage of this stuff, especially on social media, is bullshit. And so question everything, question everyone, when people come to you and say, did you hear? Or, I just read about this, or I know this is true. It's beyond what used to be false, rumors and innuendo. Now it's actually written on purpose to be false. And it's usually clickbait. It's usually a way for these bottom feeders on social media to be able to get more clicks and to get paid for it, or become more famous for it, or whatever, Instagram famous. So seek the truth and question everything. And then finally, ethics, trust, truth is more important than anything going forward. So magnify ethics. AI understands, make AI understand what it means to be human, and what it means to be principled, what it means to be trusted, and prioritize those principles, prioritize ethical approaches, or ethical, just a way of doing business much more ethically. Prioritize that and make it a part of your statement, make it a part of your actions, make it a part of your day. So, that's how you survive AI, in my opinion. So today's podcast guest, Chance Stahlhut, is the Chief Operating Officer of Concert Stuff Group, where he leads a growing family of specialized production and logistics companies serving the live entertainment industry. With a 25-plus year career that began in punk clubs and international tours, Chance has held senior leadership roles at Clair Global, VER, PRG, and Go West Creative. His background spans touring, engineering, sales, operations, and executive strategy, making him uniquely equipped to scale complex organizations while staying grounded in hands-on production realities. Chance is known for his people-first leadership style, belief in transparent communication, and advocacy for long-term career growth within the industry. At Concert Stuff Group, he's focused on strengthening team structures, improving profitability without sacrificing culture, and helping leaders think more strategically. So please welcome Chance Stahlhut. Chance, how are you?
I'm really good. How are you doing, Marcel?
It's, what day is it? Wednesday? Tuesday,
August 5th, yeah.
I don't even know what day it is, so that's how I am. It's been like a week and a half, and we're only the second day in the week so far, so... Yeah, I'm in the process of building a new business on top of our other business, and it's just so much learning and so much technology and so much new stuff that I'd never experienced. Most people have never experienced, to be perfectly honest, because it's all AI.
We've looked at your demos, and I think between just the decks it's changed. That's how fast it's been changed for you guys.
Well,
so
and you
so
should see
much.
it now. Like, it's totally different now again. So, it's just crazy. Like, literally every day, because our developers are in Vietnam. And so we usually have a meeting at 9 or 10 o'clock my time here in the mountains at night. And then, while I'm sleeping, they're basically completely changing everything. So I never book demos for the first thing in the morning, because I have no idea what's going to blow up in my face when I do it. I don't even know what I'm going to see. So I'll usually do a couple tests in the morning if I have to do a demo, and just get reacquainted with whatever it is we're offering. The core is the same offer, of course, but it just keeps getting better. Like, we're learning more, we're adding more, we're just building more into it every day. So it's pretty fun. It's exciting, but it's tiring. Like, weekends are just 6 and 7 days of the work week. So,
well, as you've built other businesses, you kind of knew the lift you were heading to. But
I did.
Yeah, super looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it's fun, and I appreciate the support. So, I got to admit, you're a guy I didn't know a huge amount about. So I appreciate that you sent us some notes that we could kind of follow. Because sometimes I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember back when you did so-and-so in the 80s or whatever. But I didn't know what your background was prior to reading the bio that you provided us and the notes that you provided us. So I appreciate you sending that in.
Yeah, we have a mutual friend of ours, John Wiseman, was
Yeah.
very. I mentioned talking to you when we were looking at the demos, and John was like, "Oh, he's like, I love Marcel," and
Yeah.
then I had to go deep dive and realize John's been on here a bunch, and so that kind
He
of prompted
has,
the
yeah.
whole thing.
Well, and one of the great things about having someone like John on is he just truly doesn't give a shit. So he is 100% transparent on everything. And we've had long talks about addiction and long talks about, AA and all the things that he's been through and almost dying and, and partying. We've had talks about that and, just like talk about a guy with a crazy, wacky career, of just total mayhem and like the last however many years, 30 of sobriety, but the last 10 or 15 years of his career have been just totally different because he's so much calmer now and he's so much more focused and less angry. Because for a long time he definitely had some anger in him. So you didn't want to be a competitor to John, 15 years ago. Today it's still hard, but it's not as anger filled.
Yeah, no, he's a sweet guy.
He is
super kind to me over all the years, and even when I've seen him have bad days, I can't say enough good things about that guy.
Yeah, I love John. He's one of my best friends. So it's nice that he talks kindly about me too. I like that. So tell me, you've probably heard the podcast before. That I like to sort of start at the beginning. So what found Chance into this wacky industry that you're a part of for so long now? This episode is brought to you today by ETC Rigging. For 50 years, ETC has made a name for itself in the world of entertainment technology. You can find ETC products in buildings of every size across the entire globe. Broadway shows, rock concerts, sports stadiums, outdoor parks, TV studios, and convention centers, you name it. They have all trusted ETC to make their spaces beautiful and safe. Many of these spaces include rigging systems to keep them running smoothly and safely. Fortunately, ETC Rigging offers a range of hoists and controls to accommodate the unique needs of various production spaces and budgets. ETC's motorized hoists and hoist control systems raise theater technology, including stage curtains, lighting equipment, backdrops, projection screens, and more. And the recent addition of Prodigy Balance, a new counterweight rigging solution for loads up to 1,200 pounds, brings more options to venues looking for safe, user-friendly rigging. If you need backstage rigging that is easy to learn and safe for students and volunteers to use, Prodigy Balance could be the answer. ETC is known for its customer support and 24/7, 365 availability. But now, employees have even more of a personal stake in maintaining that reputation because ETC has become 100% employee-owned. Each person building the rigging systems, developing the control software, and answering support calls is actually an owner at ETC. Outstanding support, reliable products, innovative technologies. This is the foundation of excellence ETC has built over the past 50 years, and they plan to deliver more in the next 50. For the latest ETC products and installation news, visit etcconnect.com.
So I got started, I grew up in Alabama, and I was interested, I went to a very large church at the time, and happened to kind of notice, the sound booth and the cameras, and got involved in that area, and was able to kind of, go from there. And I got really lucky. I think people that are successful in this industry have multiple people across different phases of your career take you under the wings. And the guy that ran that whole division also was a professor of journalism over at a local university. So he used to take me over there, and I got to edit on 3/4 machines, and I learned in that aspect. And we moved to Nashville, and I got involved in playing with a band, and I got a job at a local music store, Mars Music, back when that was a chain.
I knew what was that guy? Begelman, Mark Begelman. I knew him well
Yeah.
back in those days. Yeah,
And the Nashville one was like very influential for them because obviously Nashville, Music City,
of
heavy in
course.
the recording industry in the 90s. And so I got a job there to get a discount on equipment and, ended up meeting a lot of bands to go mix and got in the Nashville thing. And just from day one, this is what I've always wanted to do. I remember moving to Nashville and walking up and down Music Row the summer before I turned 17, like going in and asking for applications at all the record labels. Like, had no idea how to get a job in the industry. I was like, well, I'll just go in there and apply, and of course they'll hire me. And so that was, you kind of learn.
Yeah.
And worked for a lot of companies in Nashville and got tied into a management company that didn't realize I was as young as I was.
Yeah.
And put me out on some van and trailer CCM tours and then some van and trailer like punk rock tours. And somewhere in that they realized I was still in high school and like summer between my junior and senior year. And, I'm out tour managing, driving, mixing, doing merch, for these bands. And we'd hit the end of the weekend and they would have to pay me and they weren't getting paid. And I was like, well, this is the greatest industry ever. Like, I should keep doing this,
Yeah.
because they were on labels. So, they're trying to do it to sell albums. And it kind of kept going from there. And through a series of that, I got connected with an act that was tied into Clair. And I started doing freelance work for Clair. Actually, Roy Clair, I remember I was sitting in a bar and he called me to like negotiate the tour rider that we were doing for our first tour.
Wow.
And got tied into him and Ralph Mastrangelo down in Nashville and started doing one-offs and kind of went from doing staging and roofing and lighting tours. I was doing lighting tours for PGP, for Creech, and all this, and was like firmly an audio guy for Ralph. And was there a couple of years freelance and then was there as a full-time guy for like 11 years.
You went through some really incredible people in our industry, between Wiseman and Creech and Claire, obviously. What a way to come up through the industry.
Yeah, I think hindsight is I started to realize that later. And so
Yeah.
I'm super lucky. And certainly there's been moments of like, thank God, when I was a snotty younger man that they, put up or, corrected me or still didn't kick me out in the process.
Yeah.
There was a company I worked for. There's this guy, Bobby Brantley in Nashville. Our kids go or have went to school together now. And I mean, when I worked for Bobby, I had a purple mohawk, and Bobby did staging and audio. And I remember walking into his office and being like, hey, man, I don't do staging. Like, I do audio. I'm not going to go sling decks. And he was very cool. He's like, absolutely, not a problem. And all of a sudden, he's like, they stopped calling. And I called up one day. I said, hey, I haven't got any gigs from you guys. And he's like, well, you don't want to do staging. And when that's what we do here is we do both. Now, if you want to change that opinion, more than happy to have you back. It was very kind of like, all right, like I kind of came in at 18 telling you how to do it. And, you could have completely gone a different direction.
Right.
On me.
Yeah.
So I got really lucky.
Yeah. So you kind of got into the industry sort of a little bit at the tail end of the original people, but they were still pretty rough, right? Like it was still rough
Yeah.
on a young kid coming into the industry. They didn't care much about your feelings. It wasn't, Chance, how are you feeling today? It was get your ass up and get over there now, or you're going home and I'm not buying you a plane ticket.
It was a good. I think it was a good way to come in. It straddled the part where we were shifting from, the industry was still all about selling records, and
Yeah.
I was around it when we made that transition. I was around the transition of as Line Array was starting. I mean, I remember doing a showcase, and meeting Jeff Cox, who came in to mix the showcase. And him
Wow.
literally tell me about like following VDOS. In fact, actually, my first European tour was with a band called it was with the opener, and the headliner's band called No Angels. It was in Germany, and it was the West Fallon's first run with VDOS, and Christian came out to like help them the first couple shows because they were kind of in that transitional period, and had no idea at the time that like Christian Howell was out there,
That's wild.
checking on this account,
Yeah.
or checking on his thing. So like I had a really nice entry point, the fact that I got the old part and I got the new part as we transition, and so I can kind of remember how it was.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's like the perfect time. Like it's like, I have a house in Canada and I have a house in the US, and I'm old enough that I was in like 5th grade when they were converting to metric in Canada.
Okay.
So I knew the standard stuff and I learned the metric stuff and how to convert the two, because you had to figure that out too. And so I've never had a challenge between metric and imperial anything, right? Like whether it's temperature or weights or whatever. Like I've always been very good at it. And people are like, why is that so easy for you? And it's, well, I learned them both, in school. So
Yeah, no, 100%. And now it's a Google, it's a Chat GPT.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty easy to figure it out now. But yeah, so that's a cool time to have come in right at the front end of Line Array, and you got to ride that wave, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the industry shift, the technology shift, digital platform shift, all those different things where you're very fresh and, okay, I know what Trip Caliph and an XL4 sounded like on an S4 rig with Fleetwood Mac. And now now we're going this direction. And so your reference points and everything was really good. And then, but to your point, like we've gotten better. Like now we're, COVID, while it wrecked a lot of things, it also helped us go, okay, I remember if I was going to do a tour and I needed like one day off for a personal thing in the middle of 3 months, that was just no.
Yeah.
And now everybody's very accommodating to, of course, like let's figure out how to support you if there's a personal thing that you need to do, a wedding or, I think there's a lot more flexibility and people wanting to work to try to help balance this all out.
Well, it's also become a real career,
Yeah.
like back then you were gypsies, now it's a real career. Like you're making real money and people have families, and it's not the party that it was in the 80s and 90s so much.
Well, and I say at the same time, like some of this we haven't given up. Like if you think about, we were talking about this last night, if you think about the amount of stuff that is now required to be a touring technician,
yeah.
Not only do you have to do all the stuff that we used to do, the travel, the late nights, the early mornings, load in a stadium in the rain, but I need you to be an IT networking specialist.
Yeah,
if
no
you're
kidding.
a crew chief, you need to be an HR manager.
So true.
It's just we keep putting more and more on them.
Well,
it's,
HR,
to be a touring
mental
person is
health,
hard. Yeah.
Drug dependency expert, like just all kinds of things. Like it's so much more important to have those multi skills and stuff. But so when you, in the early days, you were touring as a tech, as a front of house engineer, monitor engineer, or all of the above?
So the first account I did with Clair, I came in as a customer, and so I picked up some monitor gigs. I was very young. I picked up some tech things. Ralph at the time, Nashville office did a lot of festivals.
Okay.
There was a guy, Robert Kozlowski, who was Reba's monitor engineer forever, and Koz was kind of off from her, was running all these festivals. And I did a ton of them with Koz, which was just super, you can be a really great touring guy if you can do a bunch of festivals. Like, touring's easy after that. And so, I did that, and I really enjoyed the sweet spot of being a crew chief system engineer. Like, that was my area of that because I enjoyed working with, representing the company at the time, the technology. I enjoyed supporting the engineers. It was fun and building good relationships. I had a lot of good relationships with guys I worked with, where they would trust me, I trust them. We try to build up a really good team. And it was a great time to be there. And we were constantly, every day try to see how we could do it better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And, especially, again, like probably when you're sort of on the cutting edge of the new technology and stuff, there's probably a lot of educating people who are coming in as crew members or whatever as well. Like, hey, I've never seen a system like this. How's it work? That kind of thing. And so yeah, I mean, I like that. I like that you were sort of on the cutting edge of the tech. And so, what was harder, the transformation to line array from like the point source systems to, or the transformation from analog to digital consoles?
I mean, I think you can look at it both ways. Like there were several tours. Like one of the last Prism tours I got to do was like Alan Jackson had a Prism rig well into when the i5 was very predominant. I was out of the company before Cohesion became a thing. And then Claire also at one point put out a system called the Vision, which was kind of like Prism 2.0. And so
Right.
I had mixed in conventional into that. I mean, the biggest challenge is that overall just pressure that Prism and S4s created, and then like the EVMT4s, where you got that low mid pressure, that really created movement in the room when it was done right. That was a hard thing in some of the early days. The clarity was there. But then there were a lot of systems that were great. Like the J rig on D12s that 8th Day used to put out had some of the same soft compression that the S4 on its old CTS processors did. And, you'd stand there and turn something up and be like, man, I'm a better engineer than I thought I was. Like, line arrays definitely, they either really helped you or they could, in the early days could burn you because it was inconsistent. This, like everybody had their settings and their way of amping it. And, the companies have done such a great job of standardizing that and getting it where the consistency is there.
Yeah. On that topic, like for someone like you who really recognizes the difference, because I don't, like, I've always enjoyed good sound, but I've not been able to differentiate why I like this one better than this one necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Like I saw them, in a different venue and I liked this and I didn't like it here. But like, you're probably able to easily walk into a venue and go, "Oh, that's a blah," versus that's a.
Sadly, I'm that gear nerd. Yes,
So
absolutely.
you can hear the difference between a D&B GSL and a K2.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Jesus, see, I can't. I couldn't.
Well, and
I can't even tell looking at them the difference because I'm a lighting guy for the most part.
But I think
right?
I think some of that is like I think both of those companies have done really well and like trying to be flat and that. And there's things that I've like over there's things like, hey, this does this really well and I like the way that sounds. I'm a big believer though that any and like guys like Pooch have said this for years, a good engineer is going to be good on a lot of systems. And I think until you put your finger on a fader, you really can't judge somebody's mix because that's the only way to know like what was happening in the room that night, what was the band doing, So like to your point, while knowing the technology is great, like I went to I go to concerts. I was one a couple weeks ago, and I try to just enjoy the show. Like if like I don't know what that front of house guy's dealing with tonight. I don't know if the singer is off, the drummers maybe had a fight before, So let's just enjoy the show.
Yeah. At least as an audio guy, you're sitting there listening to the show and enjoying the show, and you can hear the songs and stuff. Like lighting people, we're idiots. We just sit there and look up at the rig all night, and oh, there's a fixture out. Oh, there's this. Oh, there's that, and you practically don't even hear the music most of the time because you're too busy, looking at things and paying attention to exactly what's going on. And usually, like I've worked for a manufacturer, so I'm looking for failure points in other people's product, or I'm looking to make sure that none of my stuff is failing on a particular show. Like this is back in the day when I worked for Martin and everything failed, or I worked for High End and less stuff failed, or whatever. But like at least as an audio guy, you can probably enjoy the show. Whereas for lighting, we're just always looking up. We don't even know what.
I'll be honest. I don't look and see like what's failed, but that's a great point. I've never caught that, but I mean, I was at like Coldplay, and of course, I'm immediately like telling Sooner, I'm like, I'm amazed at how many JDCs you put. Like in my head, I'm looking at how many JDCs are now hanging on the mid rail around the stadium and thinking about the cabling that went to it and like how long did that take to load in and what was the stagehand count. Like that's working for 360 companies later, you start to like get into that piece. And for me, it's I really enjoy the immersiveness of that, but you also start to go like, all right, that's 400 JDCs. It probably rents for this. Like,
Yeah,
what's the
yeah.
budget? What was the budget
It's
here? Yeah.
crazy. Yeah. I do some work with a confetti company who provides all the confetti for Coldplay, and the pallets of confetti that they're shipping out every couple of shows is just wild. It's wild how much confetti they use in a Coldplay show.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. It's
It's a
crazy.
great show. They've done an amazing job. That team has made it incredible to be super immersive.
Yeah, it's quite an industry unto itself, though. Coldplay, like it's just wild, And
Yeah.
now they're a dating app,
I
So,
think they were 220 something shows in when I saw it, like
oh
onto this current tour. Like
yeah,
just insane.
Jesus, it is a machine. That thing is a machine. Like or I hate to say it because it makes it sound like I think I'm smart, and I'm not. But when Coldplay first came out, I thought, these guys might have some longevity. They sound a lot like U2, but I like them better. I've never been a U2 fan,
Yeah.
but I really liked Coldplay when they first came out. I'm a little over them at this point, but they're a great band and they have a great sound and everything else, and they know how to write hits too. You
Yeah.
know,
No, and
so
Chris Martin's a great front man.
he really is.
He's working that audience. He's working a whole stadium.
Yeah. No, he's amazing. He knows how to get you going, and I mean, just again, the whole show design and stuff too. Like it's the things that they do out over and with the audience. Like they were one of the first ones, that got phones involved in the shows that I remember. It was a shed tour, like probably 20 something years ago, and I remember them getting phones involved, or probably 20 years ago.
Oh wow.
And it was just like, wow, that's cool. The whole like audience is yellow or whatever it was. I don't even remember, but yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. So now you actually look at lights, so that's good.
Yeah, I kind of had 2012 was my goal to get off the road, and I was looking at Eighth Day and I was talking to Claire, and VER launched its touring division at that time, and Ralph, who had been my boss at Claire, Vince had hired, and I remember I was up meeting with Tom Arco, and just one of the sweetest, nicest guys ever, and was kind of struggling with do I want to move away from Nashville and family. And literally, Ralph called and said, I don't really know a lot about this company, but this is what they want to do, et cetera. They want us to build a team, and and it's in Nashville. And I was like, all right. So did it, and very quickly went to a company where when you get into a multidiscipline company, okay, hey, I can't buy this today because we bought this camera, or we need to buy these lights for this.
Yeah.
So you're balancing a lot of those things, and so I really enjoyed all of it. And then when I started as a video guy and went lighting and went audio. So like being in that world of 360 wasn't that big a deal. And so from then on, from 2012 to now, it's been all 360 companies. And it's great. And I'm, used to, we're going to talk about audio in this conversation, then we're going to flip to lighting. Now we'll talk
Yeah.
about staging, and you just kind of you learn it all. Not as well as, we have in the company I'm in now, we have some amazing experts at things. Like it's enough to be able to understand where they're at, but I would never consider myself to be as smart as they are in some of these specific disciplines.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, some of the people you have on your team are just incredible people with all kinds of things. It's like Jason. Like I remember the first meeting I sat in with Jason that was sort of an ops meeting, and I always knew Jason as an audio guy, and all of a sudden he's like this systems guy who is like talking about their IT systems and their ERP systems and stuff like that, and their rental software, and I'm like, man, this guy really
Yeah.
knows his stuff, and you're like a former touring audio guy or whatever. Like this is interesting, but just a really smart guy who gets it, right?
Well, and the fact when you have a guy that is running your audio video company and has been a company owner as well,
Yeah, exactly.
he knows like what really matters and what's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's hard stuff to teach. You just have to kind of experience it, like what it's like to have payroll coming up next week and, no revenue or whatever, right? Like those are
Yeah.
the things that you just have to live through to really know what it feels like. But you mentioned something, and I don't want to really jump too far out of the timeline here or anything, but you mentioned something about just focusing on the different disciplines within a 360 company versus just being an audio company. And that's got to bring in all kinds of CapEx challenges from a standpoint of just, strategically, like we've got X number of dollars to spend next year, and how do you chop that up to make the most sense? And, I'm sure that is a big part of your job today as, now that you're running a 360 fairly large company. So how do you do that? Like, is it based on ROI? Is it based on what's on the books for next year? Is it based on like just sticking your finger up in the air and going, what's it feel like? Like, how do you make those kind of decisions?
No, I mean, I think you have to obviously keep people that are really focused on what they do. So for example, like even in a 360 company, we really want the guys that are passionate about audio to focus on audio. Like they need to show up every day and want to put out the best product there. And, the guys that over here do staging to do that. We certainly want them to obviously collaborate, but you don't need this guy to all of a sudden worry about like, can I cross sell or what's going on over here? And then you put a lot of metrics to it. I think you have to use data. I really enjoy it, but I think you use data as a tool. And so a lot of people get in our industry, if you're coming into this part of it, the corporate thing of, hey, we're going to look at heavy returns or that, you have to use data to pull emotion out of it. And then you use that to drive the story. And so, your point, like what's next year. So like we're looking at a lot of things around, obviously there's a lot of bids around FIFA, what are the opportunities? But, a lesson I remember, you try to take in all these little things from people you hear over the years. I remember Troy Clair one time saying, it's never about this gig. You're always selling for the next gig. So, hey, if we're going to do something, is it this one, but where does that gear go after the fact? So like as we look at some FIFA stuff, we're going to look at it here and go, all right, well, if we had to buy something that really supports this, what is the life after that? And so we're trying to kind of stay within a lot of core inventory and have a lot of depth of it. Okay, I've got vanilla and chocolate and maybe, I don't have strawberry and I don't have pistachio, but I've got a lot of vanilla and chocolate. And so we kind of
instead of having 4 of everything, you have 100 of one thing or 2 things or whatever.
Correct.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
And then we try to be, secular. Like, so next year for us in the audio video lighting company is going to be a heavy video year. Like, and we're telling our vendors that. Like, we have to obviously buy for jobs that are leaving, and we've got a large stadium tour that'll go out. But like, we're going to do a big push in video, and then the year after that will be a really large push in lighting, so we can maximize our dollars and not just kind of keep plugging holes as we go.
But I'm still curious, and you may say, that's just our secret sauce, and I can't tell you that. But I'm still curious. Like, do you just take the head of all your departments, all your divisions, and throw them in a ring and let them fight it out, or is it 100% data based, like where it's like, okay, this one is at 76% utilization and X ROI. And therefore that's going to get the biggest part of the budget, or we went all in on getting the Beatles reunion next year, and we need to invest heavily in the gear we need for that, like, or is it just a combination of all kinds of those things and a gut feel?
It's all that. I'd love to see the cage match and just let them fight out for
that would be fun.
CapEx
it would
dollars.
Be fun. Yeah,
feel like Team Lighting would probably do that. I think if you continually invest in what is your best ROI, of course, obviously you're going to have great ROI, but you're going to continue just to grow that segment of business. So and as well as I know, like if I buy this moving light today, I'm going to have to replace it in 4 to 5 years. If I'm buying 100 and they kind of add, and then I sell that and I buy another 100, I'm just really doing the same revenue.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we've tried to go. We're going to make this big kind of secular push and go, this is a big push in the video, and we'll step up that discipline, and then we'll step up this discipline.
Yeah.
And you kind of keep raising them in the process. But you also, it helps with the vendor conversation. So like, hey guys, like, that my spend is this year, and you hold money back because there's always some tour that's going to come up that you didn't know about and you want to go get something for it. But it helps with the vendors where like, hey, like I'm going to do a bunch this year, and they go, well, actually, you should probably wait because there's a new Grand MA4 that comes out this year, and you're going to want to replace all yours. Okay,
God
well, that's
help
good
us.
budgeting.
Yeah, yeah. But it's interesting because you said something about, just investing in the biggest thing and you're only growing that thing. So, that's always sort of a strategical argument in my own head. Like, do you put the most marketing dollars into the thing that's your fastest growth or your biggest growth, or do you put it into the smallest one that's not getting any attention but has the potential to grow? And, I'm sure there's parents that are thinking the same thing about their two kids. Do I give the most money to the one who's the best soccer player, or do I give the one to the kid who's the worst basketball player? Like, where do I put the money or the effort, the time to take them to practices or the best coaching or whatever it is? And but it's always like the whole CapEx thing to me makes me never want to be in the rental business in our industry because
Yeah.
it's so challenging and it's so based on fashion. Like, today every LD wants this light, and then 6 months from now it's this light, and now we're supposed to dump all of this inventory and get as many of these as we can at top dollar. And the money on the rental side isn't going up near as fast as the price of the product. So it's a tough business, man.
No, you got to, I mean, and that's where you look at it and go like, loudspeakers are a great investment. Like L Acoustics, and obviously the bigger the speaker gets, sometimes it goes down. But like L Acoustics is a brand, so your point. Like you also look at the vendors and when you do it. So like that's a company that really protects its partners. They don't roll out replacements. They give you the long lifespan. K1 has been in the market for however long. So whenever they finally replace it, you'll have gotten all your investment out of it. They have great apps. They have great secondhand sale value. So like when you're picking products, you're trying to pick a balance of that and go, okay, I need to have some of this stuff, and I need to obviously, like I need to make sure I have plenty of Grand MA3s because it's going to do that, but like, there are those items like fixtures of, I'm going to try to pick a fixture and go, does this work for a few years? And that piece, can I get that number back? Or, CB5 tiles. CB5 tiles are still, when you bought them, they're a great investment. So
Yeah.
it's a balancing act. But I agree with you. I mean, like you can be down that rabbit hole and you have to be willing to help with your customers explain that we need to be at a certain number because you need to be profitable to make this investment that we need to in this industry to continually make sure that we have the items that they need to support their artist or events or et cetera.
Yeah.
And you are the bank for them in that process. Like I need to be able to be profitable to invest to make sure that I have the items for you so you can deliver the creativity that you need to for your artist.
Well, and I mean, for any company, you make enough wrong choices, and you're in line at the private equity or the private credit facilities out there or whatever, and just burying your company in debt and problems and everything else, and we've all seen it happen. Like I remember a particular case at VER that was pretty painful and cost them greatly because they invested heavily in something that maybe didn't go as well as they expected it to. But like you mentioned LED tiles, and I'm not going to pick on any one brand, but I keep seeing the rental rates dropping on those things, but the purchase prices going up and the gap just getting bigger and bigger and bigger between those two things. Like I remember when LED tiles were special and you had to have a particular brand and you had to have a particular model and stuff, but now it's become a little more, ubiquitous or whatever. And also prices have gone down by like 70 or 80% on the rental market as well. So that's a tough business to look at and go, yeah, I mean, you have the volume on the rental side for double the inventory, but you're now, getting declining ROI on your CapEx money.
Yeah.
And scary business, man. It's a freaky business we're in.
Yeah, no, and to your point, I mean, you've been in it as on the manufacturer side. whatever the thing that everybody wants this year, there's probably some alternate version of it next year. You know, in
Completely.
cameras and stuff like that, it was all, when you get the 2.0s and the, oh, this is, the heavy camera markets, you'll have DPs. I have to have this year. And then like a year later, oh, well, that one's complete,
Yeah.
shit. Now we got to have this one.
Yeah.
So LED, I remember years ago seeing a product. They came in, it was in January, they were showing us this product. It was gorgeous and had these really mechanics that were really interesting. And during the conversation, he was letting us know that the replacement 2.0, less pixel pitch, whatever, was coming out in November. And I remember standing there, I'm like, so you buy it now, we probably receive it in March, and you're shipping the next replacement of it in November. So we basically have this many months to make up the return.
You gotta get your money back in 6 months.
Yeah, and he was super excited about that they were releasing it. I was like, this is,
bad sales guy. I would have fired him on the spot.
I walked back to the office. I was like, you guys can keep talking about this. Like, I'm not going to jump up and down about trying to buy something like this.
Yeah. And today's podcast is brought to you by Artistry in Motion. When it's time to make a moment unforgettable, Artistry in Motion delivers. Since 1994, they've been the go-to source for top-tier confetti and streamer special effects, turning ordinary events into explosive, show-stopping experiences. From concerts and TV productions to major sporting events and theme parks, they bring the wow factor with precision and creativity. So whether you need a massive stadium drop or a subtle, picture-perfect cascade, they make it happen on time, every time. Their team doesn't just supply confetti, they collaborate with show designers, event planners, and production teams to ensure every effect is camera ready and crowd approved. Want to take your next event to the next level? Hit them up, artistryinmotion.com, and let's make memories happen. I've had the pleasure, luxury, pain of looking at a lot of companies, either as a consultant directly to that company, because I just been around so long that people start asking you to, hey, can you help me over here? I need a few things solved. So I've gotten involved in a lot of consulting over the years, but I helped a 360 company do a roll-up and got very involved in looking at each of the companies they were buying and looking at the spreadsheets and looking at their CapEx and looking at their financials and stuff. And, two things shocked me back then, and part of this is going to sound like a sales pitch for a product I'm building, but two things shocked me. One was how much of their revenue was actually spent on sub-rentals. And, there's the product pitch for what I'm now doing. And, in many cases, it was like, if you looked at the price of a show, if I was charging, $250,000 for a show or whatever, let's call it 200,000, 25%, somewhere between 20 and 30%, depending on which company you were looking at, was going straight out in cross rentals. And I was like, wow, that's a lot. $50,000 on a $200,000 show is in cross rental outbound. And then, the other one was the percentage on the books for the percentage of revenue at the end of the year that's spent on CapEx for the next year. Mm-hmm. And this particular roll-up that I was involved in, didn't really believe that number and was quite shocked by the second year of how much money they really undervalued CapEx needs. They didn't put a big enough line on their budgets for cash for those CapEx needs. And they started having people yelling at them saying, where's the money? Like, we need this stuff to be able to get these shows and we can't get it. So.
Yeah, there was a gap where when I was with PRG and then I went into the creative space and was with an agency and then kind of back in the production world, and so there was about a 1.5 year gap where I was doing some consulting for equity groups that were looking at production companies because I didn't want to do that while I was in one of those companies. That would be wrong, and that was one of my biggest conversations with them. Is the continual CapEx is something you have to factor in. Because a lot of these investment groups will do the initial and are very aware of it. And there's obviously ones that are better than others, but they were surprised when the next year you came back and said, okay, remember that $80 million you gave us last year? Well, now we need that again. And they're like, well, wait a minute, this is every year? Like, yeah, every year we're going to purge inventory out, we're going to refresh it. And so I think that continual CapEx need is something that a lot of people don't plan for in this industry when looking in and coming in from the outside, that like that is part of it. And that cycle is just sped up over the years.
Well, and it can be compared to like the car rental business, for example. The big difference that I see is manufacturers get heavily involved in that program, in the car rental side of things. So they'll, General Motors will have a deal with Hertz, for example, where they're selling them X amount of cars per year, and they may take back a certain number every year when they're renewing their fleet or whatever. And it's just a commitment between the manufacturer and the car rental company in some sense. And the numbers, the gap isn't as big, because like a $20,000 car that Hertz is buying today, they can sell it after 8, 9, 12 months of rental for $16,000 or $15,000, and they're getting a discount from the car company too. So they're buying a $20,000 car for 17 or whatever. So it's a tiny gap between that and the used price. And so in our industry, that gap is much bigger. You're losing a lot more on the used.
You want your salvage cost to be, you want that secondhand cost, and you want to buy at a volume where your cost to buy gets as close as you can to that secondhand cost. And there's some large rental companies that are out there that are buying in volume that their purchase price is what they're reselling for after hypothetically, let's say 3 to 4 years, where basically the rentals from in that time frame are running the business and creating the EBITDA. And they're recouping their investment, but you have to buy at such a volume. And to your point, we don't have that kind of secondhand market the way that the car industry does.
No. It's a much more reliable sell through, and in the car industry, it seems to work really well, whereas in our business, not so well. And the other, like those guys that you're talking about who can buy and sell sort of at the same price. They can buy the new stuff for what they're selling the old stuff for. So they're just really life cycling inventory, and it's not costing them any money to do that. And their profits come from the rental, like you said. It used to work like that. Like you used to, in the lighting business, you used to buy, example, a Cyberlight for roughly $5,000, and you would use it, and Bash, which ended up becoming the 4-wall model when Canon started it, and then became the Mainlight model when Canon bought Mainlight. You basically sell off your inventory within 2 years maximum. And in doing so, you negotiate very large volume purchase deals with those manufacturers where you're buying at a price that really closes that gap between used and replacement cost. And you could get away with it. Like back in the day, you'd buy that Cyberlight, rent it for $300 a week, and then you'd sell it used for $5,000 within 2 years. And now you're buying it for $12,000 for the moving light. You're paying $12,000. You're selling it used for $6,000, and you're renting it for less than $200 a week, or whatever, right? Like all the numbers have gone funky in the whole equation, and hence all the private equity needed for our industry now is the shows are bigger and the gaps are bigger, and CapEx is bigger, so obviously the cash has to come from somewhere.
No, and that's why in other companies or in this one, you're looking at those items that have the longest lifespan to hold it. That's why I use it. I just like the company, but I use it like a company like an L Acoustics, where that value is staying up, as long as you can. So when you do go get your money back, you can recover it, and it gives you the best ROI. And it's tough. Like you're going to have items when you look at your whole book of business, you're going to have items that you're like, that item doesn't hit the numbers, but I also have to have it to get all this other stuff working and to have this job. So it's a very blended average that you're constantly trying to weigh against.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. And I mean, L-Acoustic is obviously the very best example of that right now. In lighting, maybe Roby, but the gap again between new and used is still pretty large. And, I don't know. I always look at pressure from, Asia, et cetera. Like, you're starting to see decent line array products coming out of Asia that are not direct copies of L-Acoustic. Like, I'm not talking about the copies, which there are
Yeah,
absolute copies, that
yeah,
some have been caught, others haven't yet. But if you look at even just some of the actual innovation happening in China in the audio business now, I'm seeing products, it's starting to get better. Certainly on the lighting side, they maybe had a head start, so they got better
yeah,
several years ago, and you're starting to see companies that are selling direct into the U.S. market, like Acme,
yeah.
that are very good products now. They're not like, you can't just go, oh, that's Chinese junk, like you used to be able to, because almost everything is Chinese now, and most of it isn't junk. It's all good, So certainly some is better than others.
Yeah.
Like, Elation might be the best of the Chinese brands, and then maybe Chauvet, and then maybe Acme, or however that lines up. But it's all good now. And so in the line array stuff in big audio, is there starting to be any real competition from Asia yet, or is it still a few years away?
No, no. I mean, I think you're still investing in the three large brands, and then
Yeah.
JBL is kind of coming in there. There is a place for those. There's a place for everything. There's a budget for everything, and there's companies that work in all budgets, and there's jobs in all budgets, and you have to, at any level, you have to make the right investment for where you're at.
Right.
In our level, and the level fortunately, the level I've been in a lot of companies, you're working with a couple manufacturers. You're staying around the D&B, you're staying around L Acoustics and Meyer when you get in the speaker manufacturers,
Yeah.
because rider acceptability, their support, and then just things they do to protect the customer. They really make sure to try to get those ROIs for the customer and protect that investment the best they can. And so, you do it, but it's also to make sure, like, does this work? Can it run? I mean, at the end of the day, we're not running museums. So the gear's got to get out of the warehouse, so you have to have something that people are calling for. So it doesn't really matter what you like. It has to be what your customer is going to want to use.
Yeah. Well, it also, you said you got to decide what's what you need or whatever, but you also have to decide who you want to be. Like, who do you
Yeah.
want your customers to see you as? Like, I can't tell you how many times people have called me and said, hey, what do you think about this Sheds lighting stuff? Sheds is a brand that sells on Facebook and on Amazon and stuff, right? It's a direct from China DTC brand. And, like, I just say to them, what do you want, the name on your door to be? Like, what do you want people to think of you as in the market? The low cost leader, or the guys who get it right every time and do really high quality work? And that's who you want to associate your brand with. Is you want your brand married to an L-Acoustic or to a Shenzhen audio manufacturing group or whatever it's called, right? And so I think that plays a role, certainly. Like,
Yeah.
do you want to be a top tier quality brand, or do you want to be the low cost leader?
Yeah,
So,
and we've been very lucky that the brands that this company and other companies work with, D&B and Ayrton and Roby and all these, to be able to work in that, because you want to be able to deliver that kind of quality to the customer.
yeah. So I think somewhere in your notes I read about a special relationship that you have with Jerry Harris, which the funny thing is I have a similar special relationship, which started out pretty much the exact same way as you said yours did. So tell me about that.
2012, I went into VER, and we started, obviously, Tour Sound, and VER grew and did what it did, and I think under Vince it was fantastic, and we certainly had the growth and things like that of how it was managed. So obviously, as we all know, it headed into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And so, PRG, and through obviously equity partners, they acquired it. And, so a lot of the people that were still there post, that phase were not the people that were involved in a lot of that. And so, we had built a really great company. That's the one thing I think that anybody that looks at that time frame and goes, that company, if you take out the finances, which are important, that company dominated and really was solid, obviously, until whenever you go from private ownership into an equity group, you change how it needs to function.
Yeah.
But it was, that time of the people that were involved in that company was really special. So of course we went into PRG, huge chip on our shoulders. And I, having been at PRG for 6 years, the amount of people I've apologized to at PRG for probably that first 6 months, a year of them buying us and us feeling like it was a merger, and just what the reality it was. And so we're in a meeting, and it's my first meeting with Jerry, and driving this part of it, and Jerry makes a comment. I think we had a difference of opinion or something like that, and I got just the tongue lashing from him, all the expletives, just the normal thing, and I'm like, all right, well, obviously I'm done. Like this is it. And we ended up, he pulled me aside later, and we sat there and talked. And the thing about Jerry is he can literally in that moment be like, I disagree with you on this point, and it has no bearing on how he feels about you on anything else. Where a lot of people like, you MF'd me, and now I hate everything about you. So he's king of like, we yelled at each other and this, and now let's go have dinner. And we ended up having a really good relationship, and went from there of like honest conversations of this. And he's been a really good mentor in there. And I still got MF'd in other meetings from him, after that. And it was like, yep, you're right. But it's kind of that same thing of like, went into the situation, very much had a chip on my shoulder. I'm going to make my point, not really giving him the due credit where he is. And, definitely got shut down on that first one. But honestly, it helped us to sit there and have a very, and I still literally have a card from him he sent me for Christmas of, I remember our first meeting like it was yesterday. And so it's a good joke point for him. And he's like, look, he's like, I appreciate the fact that you're always going to be honest, and I'm going to tell you how it is. And that's where we started from.
And I think
maybe not the best way to start a relationship,
but maybe it is. I think Jerry likes the people most who can take that and handle it well, and can go to dinner after and don't go pouting off in a corner somewhere. And, because I always got a degree of respect from Jerry that I don't think all of his suppliers got, because I took the blow and, didn't kiss his ass at the end of the whipping. Usually talked back a little bit and fed him whatever my side of the story was, whether he liked it or not. And, most of those meetings, even though they ended poorly, usually finished up with a dinner or a phone call or a something where it didn't impact the relationship at all. And I've always had a huge amount of respect for Jerry and for, what he does and what he has done. And, he's like, that guy that goes into war and comes out, usually with a win. And I like it. Do I love his style all the time? Sometimes when it's directed at me, not so much. But but he's a great guy. Like, I really, really like Jerry. And when you get him outside of work and outside of work people, I've had dinners with him in Palm Beach, where he used to go quite often, and I live in Palm Beach. And I've had dinners with him where we didn't even talk about business, where it was just very friendly, very cordial, very nice. And, just a friend talking about life and whatever, right? So yeah, it's just funny that I've had those exact same meetings that you're talking about in a very similar relationship.
Yeah, and it's and it's funny. Like we've had the conversation after the fact. He's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. It was in that moment where I don't think anybody wanted to hear anything else. But to your point, we've had some amazing times of just talking about the normal stuff, and he's very good at bouncing anything off of and at the end of the day, I mean, he's seen it all, and having a guy like that in the company to not take his opinion and ask him advice, which is the role that he plays for them now of look, I'm here to help. Yeah,
it's all very interesting, and like some of the legendary stories that I've heard of him, going chest to chest with some of the bankers and stuff, kept that company, from becoming extinct, I think, at times, because they ran into some financial challenges over the years that would have buried lesser people. And he just stood firm and made things happen, right? So good on
I
him.
mean, I was fortunate. I was one of the people that kept a job during COVID. We obviously did, massive reductions in staff and salaries if you stayed on and all that. And we had a daily leadership call. And I mean, I watched him juggle battleships, pay for that company out of his own pocket,
Yeah.
fight every single day to make sure that that company didn't go under and people had a paycheck. I mean, and it was, we had conversations outside of that. Like I knew how many weeks he was, he's like, I have this many weeks left in my bank account if I don't get these deals solved to make sure that that we're here.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that guy worked tirelessly, and made it up to, all of us. And so I can't say enough good things about him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and he's the penultimate entrepreneur, living it. Like, and I get that on a much smaller scale than Jerry Harris. Same challenges, same moments where you're like, okay, this is a pivotal moment. I could go this way or I could go this way. And both of them possibly end in death. Which should I choose? The painful, slow death or the really fast one, So, it's always fun. So now you are the chief operating officer at Concert Stuff Group, which is one of my favorite, corporate entity names in the industry probably at the moment.
The fact that Jim and Michael and team made that the corporate entity name is one of my favorite things about it.
I love it. I love it
awesome.
so much. Well, what do you do? Concert stuff.
Yeah. Literally that's it. We do that. We got stuff. What do you need? Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I love it. I love it. And I love the people behind it too. So like one of the questions I had is, are they still like active on a daily basis? So are you working with and for the founders or, so they haven't like stepped aside and just advise you when necessary or whatever?
No, and look, this is a new role, and it's not a role that they had. And so a lot of, I have so much respect for Jim and Michael of obviously wanting to try this and bring this in. But no, I mean, Jim is super involved. We had breakfast yesterday morning. We have weekly meetings. We talk every other day, text, hey, here's this, and the things, and he's done amazing at everything. And he's also very good about letting his team do stuff, and he's really successful and over like right now, G2 Structures is a really amazing part of the business for us. And you get on a call with Jim where you're talking about that or talking other projects that he's doing outside of just obviously running the vision of the company. You just watch him get super excited. It's another, kind of like a Jerry. It's another guy that's just a great entrepreneur, and he's the same guy all the time, and he's very open about who he is, and his values and his culture. And he's that person all the time, which I respect. If you're going to be an asshole, be an asshole all the time.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a good guy, and he's a very family, religious guy. Like, this is who I am. This is who I want. And I couldn't say enough nice things about him.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always really liked him. I think
well, he's smart as anything. I mean, he's started all these businesses. He's found needs. He knows the bank process. He knows, he knows CapEx. He knows every part of this. He's a wealth of information and a great leader.
I think it's so funny that, your first job application or whatever, you refused to do staging, and now you operate a staging company.
100%. Yeah. And look, I clarify this. The guys over there are incredible. When you look at the guys in Guardian and you look at the guys in G2S and G2 Mobile, I mean, they are the best of the best. Cliff and Greg Harold, who run G2S, are incredible, and all those crew chiefs. I am literally just trying to, what can I do and how can I listen and how can I help? And, we're super blessed with some of the people we have in this company.
So what is your role? Like, are you running the company, or is Jim running the company, and you just, go, like he says, take care of this stuff, and you take care of this stuff, or
It's in
how
the
does that
normal.
dynamic
It's in
work?
the normal. Jim's doing the normal CEO thing. Hey, here's the vision. Here's the direction we want to go.
Yeah.
Here's the things he's passionate about. Here's the M&A he wants to look at, and we're executing that. And I am as I'm learning, trying to weigh in and say, hey, what do you think about this, or what do you think about this? And and he gives a lot of autonomy in there. I've been very blessed that when we did this, it was, I want you to come in and learn, and it's not like there's not a check-in. It's but I think in any good organization, your CEO is leading that vision, and it says, this is what's important to me, and this is the culture, and this is the direction we want to go. And in my position, and anybody else in the C-suite, our job is to kind of go execute that. And then there's things that we're working on. They did this roll up into concert stuff, and it's been a little over a year, but we kind of rolled all this in, and they started the board and took all these companies and brought them in, and then we started some acquisition. So a lot of the stuff that we're doing is all the back end stuff that I know anyway. Like that was the thing of like, all right, well, some of these things coming from other companies. So like, we're going to go work on IT. We're going to go work on HR, payroll, how we do contracting, insurance. These are not things that like, we don't need to waste the time in a meeting to sit there and be like, well, what do you want to do here?
Yeah.
That's the role of it. And I think then, we try to all strategically look at future opportunities.
And there is private equity involved in this as well, right?
Nope.
It's still all completely privately
Still private ownership.
That is incredible. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know. Like, I had never heard of a private equity transaction in it. So, but then when you see companies rolling up and targeting acquisition and stuff, like, obviously very successful in that company to be able to get into that position without bringing in private equity partners.
We have a very good bank relationship with JP Morgan. They're, as everybody does, you have options to sit there and do stuff, and they're fantastic and supportive of it. But no, this is still one of the privately owned companies.
That is amazing. That's awesome. Congratulations. Not that there's anything against private equity, but it's nice when you can do it and remain a privately held company where you still own all the stock, or at least the majority of it. So what are some of the challenges, though, like when it comes to operating a private company like that versus extremely well-funded war chest companies like Clair Global, where you've spent a lot of time, and PRG maybe not quite as well-funded right now, but I'm sure they will be again, and even Solotech and others. But there's obviously certain challenges where, like, maybe one company can go after a Taylor Swift tour and you can't, for example, because it's just too expensive, and you could buy 3 other companies with the same amount of money. But like, does that present huge challenges as you're trying to grow your business, or you just grow?
No, I mean,
anyways,
you can go get a giant check from any of these things. You then obviously, like anything, like any giant, check, you have your interest payments are going to significantly go up. So you're balancing that of, I could buy the gear for Taylor Swift, or I can pay this payment,
Yeah.
I think right now it offers a lot of opportunity. There is, to your point, there's a certain size, and when you need to be in there, it helps to have a different kind of investor. Sometimes that's private equity, sometimes that's a strategic or family institution, to kind of help you along with that. The good thing is if you're a solid company, you can generally go get what you need from the bank in measured, amounts. It's when you want to do it in a hit the gas pedal harder is when you, really see the opportunities with private equity.
Yeah.
I think the advantages are there's advantages and disadvantages, but the advantages are our board is all the people that have been with Jim that have built these companies. So you have the owners of the company functioning as the board, very well educated, very well trusted. You're collectively moving in the same direction.
All the best
which is
intentions,
a really nice place to be.
Generally, too.
Versus
some of the other intentions. But it just feels like these days, every sort of mid-size company in our industry is just building to a level where they get the attention of either Clair or Solotech or Fourwall or, one of these deeply funded companies. And like, obviously in the last 2 days, we've seen two deals. One is that Fourwall announced their big debt deal with Man Group in the UK. And then secondly, Clair being purchased by Clair. Which was one of the worst kept secrets, I think, over the past few weeks. I've heard it so many times. So it's like, oh yeah, the press release is out today, big deal. But obviously, and this isn't me putting down Clair or Fourwall. I mean, both are great companies, and especially, like, to me, Clair is such a massive brand and has such a massive opportunity to build an even bigger global brand, of course. But it just feels like everyone's auditioning to become part of these large, fund-held companies.
I take Fourwall out of that mix. I will say that there's a lot of companies, and you can respect this because you've seen this. Is there's a lot of companies where succession planning was not in there, and so
right.
What happens when the founder is ready to not be there, and I think that creates a lot of opportunity. And then at the same time, there's there's other situations that make sense. But I mean, I think in our industry, that has been one of the big drivers. That's probably post COVID consolidation of a lot of these places, because it's a lot of founders going like, I'm out. Do I want to cash out? I don't want to ESOP. I don't have somebody that's a family member that wants to take it over. But at the same time, then you look at companies, and who knows what anybody does. You look at companies like Neg Earth, and you look at companies like Upstage, and you look at like these institutional companies that are obviously have support, but are still being led by the people that led them, and are solid companies. Where they go, we all that. But I mean,
and
I think
so few now.
It is. Now. I was trying to think of like LA-based companies the other day that weren't tied into Clair.
Lights is another one.
Yeah. I mean, and with Michael, and like where he goes and what he does. But I think
and there was 8Day, and there was Sound Image, but again, they're all being bought up, and you're right though. Succession planning is a big topic that probably becomes a large part of that.
I think it drives a lot of this. Of course. What do I want to do here?
Yeah. And, you get to a certain size, and you get to a certain age, and you get to a certain, having gone through COVID, guys are just going, oh God, I don't want to ever have to do that again at my age, or whatever. So, it starts to make a huge amount of sense. And again, I'm not shaming anyone for doing it. I think everyone should do it. If you don't have a good succession plan with the funding required to continue growing that business going forward, then selling becomes a very, very good option, and everyone should look at it if you're in that position, of course. So what else did I want to ask you? There was a big one that was on this list here somewhere that I wanted to get into. So like what the trajectory of Concert Stuff Group, you've talked about, like, you guys are continuing to look at acquisitions. You're looking still at growing each of the individual divisions of the company. So is audio, lighting, video, and staging all run completely separately? Like, are they separate entities within the group?
Yeah, they're separate entities. We roll up. We have a common shared service group that supports them. Your normal back of house functions, but
marketing, accounting, what else? IT,
HR, IT, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the area that we've but you have to have focus. And so the guys that run staging are focused on staging. The guys that run transportation, because there's trucking and busing, they're focused on that. The guys that run audio, video, lighting, and that's where it works. If you hodgepodge and kind of all of a sudden if you make it where everybody has to go sell everything, you lose the focus and you lose the uniqueness of what it is. And these were all separate entities before the roll-up, to kind of help build a better support system over them. So if they were all successful by themselves, don't bring them together and make them unprofitable through consolidation.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like a completely genuine, sort of organic way of combining companies where it's like, okay, everyone is spending X% of your profits on these 6 or 7 things. Let's
yep,
just create this entity that does those 6 or 7 things extremely well and really efficiently. Because like even things like marketing, if you're buying one ad, it's $100. If you're buying 10 ads, it's $900. If you're buying 1,000 ads, that the discount goes much heavier at that point, and it becomes much more efficient.
and that's exactly the situation. I mean, that's it. What it's done is it's given a platform, and that's been the things that have been M&A have been very strategic, and they've been things that have culturally aligned, overlapping customers, geographies, very specific, on products. This thing is in this business and does this really well, and isn't just another one of these. And then it's created that back of house platform to sit there and because it's if I'm going to weigh out, am I going to do more marketing and try to like contribute more to the employee plan, or am I going to try to buy this capex? Like, you're weighing all these things out as an entrepreneur. And so I think what it's allowed to go, okay, hey, I've got that back of house thing. We can help look at capex as a company in a better volume and how we approach that. And then I can be focused on the stuff that I'm really good at and go take care of my customer.
Yeah.
And your integration ends up being a little bit more smooth because you're not trying to be like, I'm just going to keep buying buying lighting companies, and now I need to try to figure out how to smack all this inventory together.
Yeah.
And everybody's distros and lights and trusses and socket links are different.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm old enough to have been at the beginning stages of PRG, part of all of that. I didn't work for PRG, but I worked for their suppliers and was very close with some of the companies they were buying, including Bash and Vanco and Cinema Services and all the early companies that they bought. And watching it all and knowing all of the people running those companies and now part of the management team at PRG, I got to see so many of the problems that happened. And it was things like, at the time, Studio Color was the hot moving wash light and really the only good alternative to a VL5 at the time. And so they were being used on a lot of television shows, and they'd ship them in from multiple locations in for a big TV shoot somewhere. And I worked for High End at the time, and I'd get the call from the LD saying, "These lights are shit." Well, what's wrong? Well, they're all different color temperatures, because they came from 4 different locations with different lamp lives. And, so you had one with 100 hours on it and one with 1,000 hours on it, and it looked yellow compared to the one with 100 hours, right? So, problems like that, they just didn't know what they didn't know. Different casing, different cabling, different clamping, all the infrastructure was different. And so they really learned early on that infrastructure is very expensive, and it's also can be very problematic when it comes to putting a show together. If you have 4 different case types going out on tour, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Loading trucks is pretty inefficient. So
no, we literally spent a couple hours in a meeting today of us looking at our case infrastructure, because obviously right now we have 2 companies that can share that. And so any decision we make moving forward, we want to make sure we're doing it under that idea of how can this be, we don't want to be in a situation where we're transferring gear all the time, but we want to be able to share it and make sure it matches when that happens.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like and I'm watching Clair do it. They had finally kind of gotten everything aligned and got MD integrated and Shoko was integrated and all that. And then COVID happened. Now they're buying all these, and now it's that same thing of, all right, now we're spending money back on integration to get that packaging right.
You mentioned sharing, and it was another really funny, interesting, sad PRG story in the early days of PRG, but they went from everyone having your own inventory and using your own inventory to forcing everyone basically to use each other's inventory. And so I would get, like, for example, potentially a discounted rate if I had Vanco in Orlando and I was renting from Cinema Services in Las Vegas. But to ship it across the country, made it more expensive than just renting it locally from my competitor. And they wouldn't
Right.
let you rent it locally from your competitor. You had to rent it from somebody in the group. And so I just remember did you know Marty Nerudin, God rest his soul?
So
Yeah.
Marty, I was Marty's last manager.
Oh, okay.
And Marty was just such a great guy.
Yeah. Marty was an amazing guy, but I used to sit
Yeah.
for hours consoling Marty over these types of topics. Like Marty's like, these people, they won't let me rent lights from Christie down the block, and I'm paying $200 to ship them across the country when I could rent them for $75. And he was right. But, again, it's just problems that you've never had before that you got to find solutions for on the fly, And, one of the other questions I had from you is again, you can tell me none of my business, but I'm curious, when you guys are rolling companies into this group, are you retaining the former owners? And are they being retained as part owners still, or are they just being retained as managers or part of the group, or how does that all work?
So, and as far as everybody's kind of their deal is their deal, but everybody that has been in this, the goal that is people that are excited and want to do it. So Loud and Clear came in recently. Bill Devers is a close friend of Jim's, does a lot of production and management stuff, and Bill is gung-ho and on it every day. I mean, I literally have been trying to plan the next, hey, we need to all sit down and look through fixed assets in your shop. And Bill's like, okay, well, this week I'm here, and then I'm on this cruise ship doing this gig, and then I'm doing this, and
Wow.
I'm like, all right, well,
He
Bill,
didn't
at some
retire.
point, let me know. No, and none of this is that. This is very much of what is the platform to help people go focus on where they want to be at. And Bill is a fantastic example. There's 340 Productions, which is a producing team that is here. They do tour production. Brian and Ryan, Zito is now part of that group. Incredible people. This is literally of how can we support you with the back of house, and those guys have just been crushing it. And they're younger than I am, and I'm youngish. And they're, it's just to give them, let's take some pressure off of you for you to go focus on what makes you exceptional.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a huge amount of sense, because I've been around a lot of these roll-ups, and it's like a thing that happens to most founders, who have been building this business for the last 20 to 50 years in some cases, right? And they suddenly don't know what to do with themselves because someone else has taken over their company, and they are the genius who knows everything about their company, but now they're not being asked how to run it anymore, or they're even worse, they disagree with how it's being run now.
If you're doing this, these are the people that are the reason you're wanting to do it. So why would you not
include them?
You want these people involved.
Yeah. Makes a ton of sense. It makes a ton of sense.
This company it doesn't matter if it was us or anybody, this company is attractive because of these people.
Yeah.
Getting, and there's ones that, in all honesty, I've seen some of these things that have gotten thrown the way, and there was one I remember, the two founders are here, and they at max want a 2-year, they want to stay 2 years, but would like to be here less, immediately into the circular filing cabinet, because okay, so everything that worked for your company that made you where you want to get to where you're looking to do this goes away. It doesn't matter how good your succession planning is. So it's really about, this is a founder-led company with a whole bunch of entrepreneur founders. When you look at the guys that are running these divisions, that I just am very happy and lucky to get to be able to be a part of, that is working with other founders and entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And it's just a platform for entrepreneurs and founders to give them that launch pad to be successful.
That's amazing. I love that approach. Again, I've been on the other side where I've heard calls from both people, from the company that bought the company and from the former owner, both saying the other side's an asshole, or the other side has no clue what they're doing, or the other side, lied to me, or the other side, whatever. And it's always sad to me when it comes to that point, because it almost reminds
Yeah.
me of someone who like has decided they can't raise their kids anymore, so they should really give them to, their brother or their sister to raise their kids for them, and then both sides end up hating each other or whatever. Like the parents should still be in the kids' lives, and you should support the new parents who you've given up your kid to raise or whatever. But I don't know. It's a complicated situation. It always is. So the better you can treat those founders, I think, the better off you are.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I don't take it lightly. I have, through multiple companies, have been involved with people like this, and have been very lucky to kind of learn what works and what doesn't. And you don't take lightly, this person has built this business and has this value on it. And, you see that in deals and how sometimes people value it of, I've got this sweat equity in it. But even when they're realistic, it's still, you have to go in and be respectful and careful because, in all honesty, I'm playing with house money. Like that's been my comment. And I always joke about that. Like, it's easy to work for a company and not have to, there's only been a few times in my life where I've had to like pull money from my account for payroll. In the Tour Sound VER days, we were kind of getting started. For the most part, I've always been able to work off somebody else's. So I try to be really respectful of, when I go in and be like, well, we got to get rid of all this stuff. It's all junk. Like, well, man, I that did a gig and I bought that and I paid for that. Like, you gotta be careful about how you approach these conversations with people.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So I heard your daughter's getting married.
My daughter's getting married. Yeah, next June.
Next June.
In Cape Cod. Nobody will give me a budget.
Ugh.
Like I just keep asking. They keep laughing at it. So so we'll see how this goes.
Yikes!
I'm like
great.
I've had customers that do the same thing to me, guys. Like and salespeople. I know where this is going.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I'm not an idiot.
I always love when you ask a customer, what's your budget, and they say, well, I don't really have one. Okay, well then it's $500,000, and they go, well, that's way too much. Then you do have a budget.
Everybody has a budget once
then
they
you
hear
do
a
have
number.
budget. Yeah, exactly. Of course, you just don't want to be the first one to put the number out, usually, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be cool. That's your first getting married then?
That is my first getting married. She
Okay.
just turned 25. She's been with this guy for 4 years.
Cool.
He's a super nice guy. Super excited for them.
That's helpful. And he's not in our industry.
He's not in our industry.
And he's not in private equity.
And he's not in private equity.
And hopefully he's not a lawyer either.
Not a lawyer.
All right, good. Then you're safe, I think. Everything else is okay. So what's your motto?
This Sarah asked me this, and I was sitting there thinking about it, and it's kind of been all those things. And I wish I had something catchy like John McBride. Either you rock or you suck. That
is a good one.
Pretty known one.
Yeah.
I think honestly, for mine, for me, it's more of I'm trying to be much more authentic and kind every year that goes by. You can like me or not. This is kind of who I am. I try to be fair. But I think the biggest thing that I'm trying to do, it's the thing I judge my parenting by, since we were just talking about my daughter. If I have somebody that comes up to me and talks about how kind and nice and respectful my kids are, then I've done a good job. Everything else is secondary.
I love that. Yeah.
And that's really where I just want to be. Like, I want to be people of, am I kind? Do I take care of people? Am I trying to be, this is who I am. Am I fair? That's kind of where, I think that's my motto right now in life, is just to be that.
Well, and the higher you get up the food chain in a business, the harder it is to be remembered or recognized as that person, because you are hiring people, you're firing people, you're making decisions that aren't always the most popular decisions. You're always the one who gets uninvited to the most things because he's mean, or he's this or that. And, I'm one of the kindest, most loyal, most giving people that there possibly ever was walking this earth. I give away my time every day, way too much, to the point where my fiance now says, that I'm crazy. Like, you got to be careful. You're always out of time. You're always too busy for everything, And it's true. Like, if you asked me right now, hey, can you spend the next 2 hours explaining to me how to incorporate AI in my life? I would absolutely do it. If you said, tomorrow can we meet? I want to talk to you about something that I'm stuck with right now that I think you might be able to help on. done. I'd do it in a minute. And so, but like I said, the higher you get up the food chain, it's easy when you're an account exec or something to be loved by everyone, especially if you've got an expense account. But, to be the CEO or the top, the president, the even COO, and be loved by everyone, that's an accomplishment. That's big.
No, and it's and trust me, I'm aware that like I in my role, it is not going to be. I'm everybody's bad cop for conversations.
Yeah, of course.
That's how it is. It is, and so I think that's why for me now it's a much more conscious piece of this. Of I know that that's going to be a thing in life, and it's just continue every year to become more and more a thing. So I have to work really hard to. Yes, that's who I am, but I'm I'm trying to be a good person, try to be a kind person.
Love that. And with that, I think we shall say goodbye, because I know you probably have other things to do, and I certainly do as well.
Awesome.
Please, if you happen to run into the Big Cheese, let him know I said hello. And he's been on the podcast as well, and just somebody I really appreciate and admire. So,
okay, awesome. I absolutely will.
Good luck to you guys. I love the company. I love the brand. I love the name, and love what you're doing. And I love that it's still, independently owned. It's a cool thing. Not that, again, I'm not against private equity. I think it's necessary in a lot of certain examples, but I love when people can stay independent as well. So yeah,
awesome.
Cool.
Thank you, Marcel.
Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it very much. Enjoyed it. All right. See you later.